A few months back, I had a conversation with Michael Rice. Now, Michael is an Irishman who is the father of bioarchitecture. He has been involved in men's work. He has been a martial artist. And we had a very interesting conversation. We covered the territories of, terrain theory. He was very excited to speak about terrain theory and alternative ways of thinking about health. I think that's very important as long as we live inside of a pharmaceutical and health paradigm of allopathic medicine, which is focused on pharmaceuticals, petrochemicals put into pills, petrochemicals being derived from oil that comes out of oil rigs, the same oil that powers our cars. So our Western, it's crazy, but it's true, our Western medical paradigm boils down to eating oil in order to become healthy. Obviously, we can have a long conversation about how Rockefeller undermined holistic medicine and all of these things, but this is about a conversation with Michael. It's a very controversial conversation, I would say. It's also a conversation with a man who is quite inspired by Gnostic beliefs. And I happen to reject Gnostic beliefs, and I think they are essentially at the root of a new age and a lot of deception in the world, Luciferian deception. I felt like from my more Christ-centered point of view, I had to add that information because the New Apostolic Reformation and the various kinds of distorted forms of Christianity that are rising now, a lot of that is inspired by Gnostic beliefs. And Alice Bailey and, people who are celebrating Lucifer as their Lord and the Redeemer. The whole world of spirituality originates from that point in time. The moment of deception, as I think it was, of humanity, or believing that in actual fact, the serpent was here to help humanity towards Gnosis, towards realizing the wisdom that God kept hidden from us. One moment, whether you believe it happened or not. And we have a very interesting conversation about this, Michael Rice and I, because as he correctly points out, there's a lot about the things that we see and believe that are very similar. And I would be interested to hear from you after you've watched this conversation, which I think you will enjoy, how far you think we're apart and how you see these things, because these are conversations that are increasingly important to have in a time like this, where revelation is working humanity and where themes from prophecy are playing out around us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll be back with a closing note at the end.
Like yourself and like hopefully anyone who might be listening, there is an inbuilt wish and desire to connect with the truth. And
Yes.
whatever way, shape or form that really feels right in the core of the heart of the message that we're here to do and connect with. So when it comes to something like sickness, is it real? Of course, we see it all around us. We see many people suffering for one reason or another. So during the recent years of the COVIDiacy, and we were joking that there's already a semi-humorous...
There's already a vocabulary around it, yes, correct.
So COVIDiacy made the most sense to me as a description that, this notion and this belief and this projected psyop that there was an invisible, undetectable pathogen that was going to floor us all if we weren't careful. And certainly if we didn't take whatever juice we were told to take. So we were not buying this, we were not entering into that. So we needed to understand a little bit more. So for years we had been interested in things such as, and when I say we, just for context, that's my partner and I. Her name is Zana. She's a remarkable woman, and she's anchored in and through truth. And she expresses that through wisdom, beauty, and love every day and every moment. And I'm very blessed to have her in my life and in my world. So when I say we, we're very, very lucky to have such a person walking with me and diving with me.
Yeah,
so
that's a blessing.
It really is, And okay, so we were exploring. So I'll say I, but just so you know, I haven't been alone in this, So I was looking at what's going on? Is there a sickness? It wasn't like nervously trying to find out. But for years, I was aware of the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, Lipton. He wrote a number of books. One of them is The Biology of Belief. And he was an expert for back in the 60s and 70s in stem cells and so on. And he was denucleating cells. In other words, taking out the nucleus from a cell. And modern medicine would basically say that the cell should die because that's the brain. You take out the brain, there's no cognitive functioning, there's no capacity to regulate anything. But he was noticing that for many months the cell would stay viable. Eventually it would degrade because it didn't have the DNA which was necessary for printing a new set of proteins for biological function. But he realized that it was the membrane of the cell that was interacting with the environment and maintaining function. So this is called epigenetics, that above genetics. So the central dogma of the medical model is that there's RNA, mRNA, there's DNA, and that DNA is king, and it's defining every biological behavior. But he was saying that's not true. 95% of what we might consider as a medical condition would be environmentally induced. And he had 3 different T's. There were toxins, thoughts, and traumas. So trauma, if you physically hurt yourself when you were exercising as a teenager, and that kind of stuck with you, and that can cause an imbalance over time. It can cause a degradation of the nerve impulses, etc., etc. And you could have some knock-on effect from the result of some trauma. Then toxins, which we'll get to in a moment, but the other one was thoughts, because he realized that the membrane of every cell has, say, on average 100,000 receptors, and they're all tuned to different things like vitamin C, nutrients, minerals, and they're little gateways. And if a chemical comes onto the surface and it has the right electrical correspondence, it'll open a channel and let something in or release something. And that's balance, that's health, that's homeostasis, that's a membrane integrity. Now, think of the cell, but then we get up to the scale of us. And then the scale next would be a society. But let's stick with the cell for a moment because it's really cool to get that. He also noticed that electromagnetic signals, not just chemical, were having an impact. So you get a signal of some description and it has an electrical, and it opens a channel. So what are thoughts? There are electromagnetic signals in effect. And so your thoughts dictate your mind, body, spirit connectivity. So your health is deeply connected. So if someone tells you, like my own late father, almost 20 years died ago, he had a brain tumor and he was told he had 6 months to live by guys in the white suits, and he died 6 months later. And I'm not dramatically going to say he died exactly 6 months later, but it was within the 7th month that he finally having
the nocebo effect,
nocebo, absolutely. And so then we take that membrane out, we take the cell membrane, and what do we hear? We've got a membrane of conductivity, connectivity, and a sensory input. What we see, hear, taste, smell, touch, that information is being processed. Massive amount of editing is going on in order for us to maintain function, because if we were to process everything that's available to be perceived, we wouldn't be able to function. We'd literally be looking at the aura of the saber-toothed tiger before he ate us, So the brain cuts out a huge amount of information and leaves us with just enough to get around and not be hit by a bus. So then we've got this covidiocy that kicked in, and we're told there's an invisible pathogen that's kicked. But let's say it's not that. Now, let's say that you have a toxic amount of information or energy or substances or something in the body sufficient that it's difficult to maintain health. And our body is brilliant at excreting and getting rid of toxins. It's fantastic. You can help that process with minerals and nutrients and fresh air and clear thoughts and so on. You can do a hell of a lot to keep your immune system up in terms of your capacity to engage and interact with the elements of the environment. But then if you're in a shitty environment, and or you could be in a beautiful environment but in a toxic relationship, or you may not have been able to let go of a grief or some trauma from the past, and it seems to flavor much of your processing. Regardless, the body wants to get rid of it. This amazing, beautiful, divine machine is very interested in maintaining beautiful function, creative function for as long as possible, despite evidence and information to the contrary. So we will take every opportunity to discharge that, to let it go. And when it reaches a certain level where it's just not viable, we get what we call sick, because the body says, okay, I think it's time. I'm going to reduce energy and use what's available for building up a good temperature, burning out what's necessary to do, sneeze and snuffle and cough and ears running and all the rest of it. And what's happening is, if you are sick for a few days and then you say, this isn't going, I've tried everything, I'm going to go to the doctor. And we must remember that the average age of death of a doctor in the West is 56. And the highest.
Is it really?
It is, you know.
That's an insanely low number.
Isn't it? That's the average in the West of a doctor.
That's wild. That's more than 20 years lower than the average.
Can you believe it? And I'm 58 now, so I'm not a doctor. Thank So
yeah.
So
what's before you start to break your stride in this way? But what is the explanation for this? There must be some sort of theories as to why
there are. It ranges from stress levels. It ranges to the possibility that they're swimming in a sea of toxins. That would be my interpretation without a medical background, you know. And but
you generalize like the idea of a pathogen to a more to toxins, like a general toxin load. Is that the idea?
Oh, well, no. Get this. This is the last missing key in this, and then we'll move on. That if you go to the doctor, let's say on day 3. Now, if there's someone with medical out there, I apologize. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm just giving an overview. If you go to the doctor,
we're just chatting, and
we're just chatting. Yeah. If I go to a doctor and I look, doc, I'm feeling a bit shit, you know, and he says, okay, let me take a blood test. And he takes a blood test and he says, okay, there's evidence here of a biological infection or some sort of what do you call it, biotic, you know, whatever, antibiotic, some evidence of something there, and therefore you have a biological infection, or what they say you have an infection. If I go a few days later and he tests the blood, he'll find some viral fragments in the blood. He'll say, oh, you've got a viral infection. If he comes back a little while later and I get another blood test, he'll find evidence of funguses in my blood, and he'll say, you've got a fungal infection. So there is a natural process of releasing that goes through biological, viral, and fungal expressions. And depending on when you get tested or your blood gets looked at, then you will be told by them that you have a viral infection, you need to do this. You have a fungal infection, you need to do that. But these are the stages, you know? It's I don't know what a good metaphor would be. But let's say you were building a house, and I'm an architect, so let's say you're building a house and someone came to visit the house and they just saw the foundations. They would just think, okay, how are you going to live here, you know? Because they don't see it. But then they come back later and there's walls up. They'd say, well, this is interesting, but there's no roof. Like, what are you going to do? But the whole process from start to finish has various stages of expression. And depending on where you look at it, you might get it. I guess the best analogy would be when that story of the blind guys that go up and they're allowed to touch an elephant. Yeah. And one guy touches the tail and the other the trunk and the leg, and they all have a different perception of what the elephant looks like. That's effectively a good metaphor for this. So terrain theory, in essence, I apologize to the true proponents of it for this overview, but is saying that there aren't invisible pathogens, that there are environments and there are conditions whereby you will be overwhelmed with a detox potential, and if it's happening all around you. And so to think of the sickness as a detox, and in my experience, that will increase the process for getting through it because you're not resisting it. So the first foundation of the average parent is to bring the temperature down in the kid, because they've been told that if it reaches a certain measurement, the kid will explode, you know? And it's true, you know?
Little Peter is going to catch on fire, but then you actually interrupt the healing process.
You know, I've 5 kids that are now adults, and they never had antibiotics, you know? And so they nor were they vaccinated as children. That's another story. So, you know, they remained healthy, but if they got something, I can now retrospectively look back and think they didn't have a cold. They were hanging out with all their mates, homeschooling, and then they detoxed, and then they were fine 2 days later. And because they were having fun, in inverted commas, like they were just enjoying life because they didn't have the stresses of school and all the rest of it. They were not interested in being sick. I remember as a kid, I was happy to be sick in school because it meant I might get a few days off school, because this was Catholic Ireland and school was not a very conducive place for well-being, for one reason or another.
Mm.
And that's where we mentioned briefly the whole idea of the Irish upbringing and the Catholic in the schools and the association of abuses and so on. But
were you in a boarding school?
I was actually this is an oxymoron if you're ready. I was a day boarder, no less. So it was a boarding school, but I would go till 10 o'clock in the evening. So because I was living 5 miles, 8 kilometers away, myself and a few other boys from the area would come in the morning at 7:30 and leave at 10:30 in the evening, having had school and then abusive sport regimes, and then 4 hours of silence in a large cold hall in the evening where you had to study, and if you made a sound you were punished. So that was, wow. We even had school on Saturdays, so that was my wonderful school upbringing. But it helped me focus and allowed me to get the necessary basis to get into the School of Architecture at the 10, 16,
So since you have looked more into this germ theory and terrain theory than I have, I've always wanted to look more into it, but sure. I'm not qualified to ask questions around the validity of the statements you made around terrain theory, but I am qualified to use my general excellent pattern making skills. So here's one question that I have for you. You're talking
sure.
about detoxing potential, and so there is this feeling in what you're saying that there is a general toxicity level in any environment you're in that you absorb through whatever means, I suppose through the skin, through the inhalation, maybe also exposure to other people's bodily liquids.
Sure.
Then you are exposed to this. And you're also talking about it as if it's something that you can desire to become sick because it gives you certain benefits. So for instance, now that we have experienced our son being in preschool for a little while, almost a year, as with we are parents who are very interested in holistic thinking around health, and we are generally very suspicious about Western allopathic medicine by this point. So we also have not vaccinated our boy. We see no reasonable nor spiritual rationale for that. But there was a lot more sickness in the house. And I don't think that our son wanted to be sick. I don't see any plausible statement can be made in that direction. So why is it that the detoxing expresses similarly across a population? So for instance, this strange pandemic that we went through, symptoms were by and large similar. Why is that?
Good question. Okay, here we go. I would first like to say is that it's not that you want to get sick or have a child will have a desire to get so. They have a desire to be healthy. And if that's increasingly difficult for one reason or another, then the body will detox. That's my understanding of it. So we are living in a very electromagnetically toxic place. And if our body is basically a bioelectrical field, in essence it is, our heart is an electromagnetic pulse generator, the brain is doing the nervous system. So we're very, very susceptible. And this obsession with electric cars, the levels of electromagnetic field strength that has no reason to be anywhere near the human body is overwhelming. That's a whole other discussion,
For sure. So,
it's not that we have a desire to get sick. It's just we do so in order to detox.
Understand.
Okay. So the second part, that was one thing. The second part of the question, because my brain shut off there. You said.
Well, the question is if it's just
Yes. Yeah.
detoxing, why is it that the
Yeah.
detoxing expresses similarly across the
Very
population?
good. All right. So, have you heard of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake? It's an
Yes, morphic resonance.
morphic resonance. That's a big factor, the 100th monkey. So there is within a bandwidth of species, biological bandwidth, a huge amount of resonance, literally two tuning forks together. So because we humans, those remaining humans, would be sharing a large overlap of resonance from one to the other. So when there is a biological need to detox en masse as a collective, because it's not like every cell, it's not like one cell in your body says, okay, it's not stretching, I think I'll detox this morning, it's Monday, I'll get a good run at the week. Your organ will detox, that's a collection. Society will detox, that's a collection. So there will be an inevitable collective agreement. Are you familiar with the concept of the wisdom of the crowd?
Yes.
Yeah, that all else being equal, a collective of beings, whether they're animals or humans or whatever, will have a wise response to something if not interrupted, if not interfered with, if not deliberately distracted or diverted from that natural setting. So there will be this unconscious, perhaps superconscious understanding that now is the time to purge. Now it's a time to release. Now it's a time to let go. So that will happen efficiently. It doesn't make sense within that efficiency for everyone to do it differently. Now there will be different time frames based on an individual's setting at the beginning of the detox. If their immune system was compromised because of a number of factors, then it's going to take a little bit longer to get to the functional level. If someone was fine and then they just got a sniffle for 2 days, that's it too. So
here's a question though. I want to interject. I'm looking at this idea of the amorphic field.
Yeah.
And I see that once there is a field established, it's natural for new participants in the field to gravitate to the already established, I would say, agreement or frequency. Yeah. But the field also needs to be initially constellated. And so the question is, who are the triggers? What are the triggers for the field to constellate in a particular fashion? All right. So that makes the interesting, opens the interesting inquiry, for instance, that if the authorities claim that the symptomatology for COVID was different, would we have a different experience of the sickness? Or is it something else, that there are certain like key individuals initially that arbitrarily express a symptomatology, and then the rest of us imitate them? Like, what is your take on this?
Well, it's such an exciting subject, really. Not necessarily the COVID, but this whole notion of reality and cymatic creation. I'm sure you're familiar with the notion or the study of cymatics.
I'm not familiar with cymatics. No, I'm not.
Well, the original studies, it's basically the study of vibration and how it might express. So if you get the original studies were a metal plate, about yay big, square, and it was suspended on a single central pole, so it wasn't like on a table. And onto that was sprinkled some powder. I think originally it was lycopodium or some very, very small, perfectly spherical pollen. So they were very light and free to go. The original experiments were taking a violin bow and rubbing the bow along the edge of the metal plate, creating a physical vibration. And as they were doing it, the pollen automatically self-organized itself into a very symmetrical geometry. Now, that studies were done, like this was a certain vibration. If the plate was bigger, interestingly enough, the exact same pattern would happen, only bigger. So it wasn't like it would be more complex and so on. So as the studies increased, they started connecting the plate to an oscillator, which allowed you to digitally increase the vibration multiple hertz, thousands of hertz up from sort of 0 all the way up. Right. And literally you'd have, and the pattern would be there. and every little lycopodium would be doing its own individual dance, some of them moving around the whole plate, but always doing so within the frame of reference of this basic signal, this pattern. So this is like, it was an invisible tune and everybody was dancing to it. You see where I'm going with this. And as the vibration was increased, there would be, the pattern would get ever more clear. But then as it was increased again, there would be a moment, Ivan, where the pattern would spontaneously break down. And it would literally break down, and then a new pattern would click into place, not speed up.
As you were modulating the frequency.
As you were modulating, you see the digital numbers, beep, 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 you know, and you hear, ooh, and then you'll see the pattern break down. It would suddenly be chaos.
Yeah.
And then think a brand new pattern that had no bearing on what went before.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's very effective.
Now, if you look at it as a video, you'll see this, you'll hear this, ooh. After a while, you can't hear it because it's beyond the audible range. All you see is this amazing pattern suddenly break down in a split second and forming a new one like magic. It looks like magic. Now, if you
what was this field of study called? Cymatics?
Cymatics. C-Y. Matics.
Cymatics.
Cymatics.
This sounds interesting because this can obviously be translated to human consciousness.
Oh, directly.
That's the process we're in right now. That we are currently in the breakdown of the pattern phase. And so the question is, what is the new pattern?
We see it as a video. You see this continuity and you see this effortless shift. But if you see it as a series of photographs, you'll see one pattern, one social order, one social belief, one planetary consciousness, you know. And then you see Mad Max. You see a breakdown of pattern, of order. And then you have some imaginary utopian future. So this seems the utopian pattern, which is more complex, more beautiful, not more complicated, more complex, more geometrically coherent, more patterns dancing together. So you see, this is the way life is. This is what we must avoid, this transition, this Mad Max chaos, end of the world, apocalyptic vision. And this is unlikely because humans are not ready for this. So this division has fueled the collective narrative. We're here and we need to maintain it and survive as best we can. It's shitty, but there it is. We must avoid the transition, and this is impossible. So every version of this whereby, you know, the Christian idea is that Jesus will come back and then the lion will lie down with the lamb and we'll have 1,000 years of good stuff happening. They don't say what happens after the 1,000 years, which is interesting. But you've got this.
They somewhat do. Yeah, Satan comes back for a little while and then he disappears forever.
I've been a bit flippant there, you know, but there's every story about this. The sci-fi futurists say that this is AI and we'll have to be neural linked and all this bullshit, you know, and transhumanism. And then whatever we do, we must control the transition. So it's a natural pattern. Now, what's interesting is that the pattern isn't fixed. It looks the same, but all the individual particles are continuously moving. Now, prior, you'll see if you slow down the video, frame by frame, you'll see something which is where you and I come in, Ivan, and men that you work with and people, that some of the particles on the periphery already are hearing the new tune because they're not stuck in the middle of the pattern.
And they're always on the outskirts of the...
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah, so it's that expression, those that hear...
Edge walkers.
Those that dance are taught to be crazy by those who can't hear the music. So we're already beginning to think, no, there's a new vibe here. Now, what I would be reluctant to recommend is that we throw that onto something like the Galactic Federation are going to come and save us, or the Ascended Masters, you know. To me, we are the ones we've been waiting for. We just need to reach that vibrational level of cymatic consciousness. So now, going back to the COVID, that basically there was a narrative that was imposed. It was a tune. Now, you know those Russian dolls, the matryoshka. One doll sits inside the next, inside the next, inside the next. You know what I mean? Those, the dolls. Yeah,
I had one of those.
Yeah, so that is a good display symbol for fractality, fractality means the same shape expressing at different scales.
Yeah.
So nature uses fractality to communicate from the very small to the very big and vice versa. So
Yes.
when there's shape similarity, there is morphic resonance. When there's morphic resonance, there's communication, there's transfer of information.
Mm-hmm.
So the COVID narrative basically saw this sequence, let's say, of Russian dolls, and they removed a few of them and they put in a can of Coca-Cola or a vial of injection or something. They basically broke up the understanding by introducing a foreign signal. Now, that signal was a belief system, and that signal became that which people were convinced to dance with. So they were not dancing, they were basically jerking, because a dance would suggest some form of harmony and musical interplay. So they introduced a discordant, literally and metaphoric, a discordant signal into the collective consciousness. And they fuel that with fear. You'll kill your grandmother, you can't go to work, you'll lose the benefit, you know, you won't be able to travel, you won't be able to party. Every possible scope and scale, they were in there, tuning it and introducing the fear. And you know, the fear, FEAR, false evidence appearing real, you know, there it is. So the fear collapsed the wave of most people's cognitive function. And we were amazed at very intelligent people falling for it, very spiritual people.
I was absolutely astonished. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Really? And we were actively trying to say, well, look, what's the common factor here? We explored many possibilities. Is it blood group? Because we were both O negative, probably still are. So we're just thinking maybe there's a blood group that somehow, you know, but that was just a shot in the dark. And it turns out, if you pardon the pun, it turns
would
out.
Would that be a flavor of frequency theory, that if you have a certain blood, then you can hit them with a particular frequency?
Look, we explored that possibility, but we also met those who were not jabbing that were not that blood group. So we had to let go of it.
I never considered that. I always saw it as a feature of the multiple vectors of that corruption happening. But one of the most important ones was disembodiment.
Yeah.
So a struggle with being in the body.
Yes.
One that I see was unhealed parental trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm thinking about people right now, I'm seeing it. I think I can argue for both sides, but what I notice with people who have unhealed father trauma is that since they don't have dad, they want the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's and so, you know, because you want, if you have unhealed parental trauma, you still live inside of that infantile idea that somewhere out there must be my perfect parent that I never had. Yeah. And so if they come on the scene saying, oh, we will take care of you, it will all be good if you just submit to our authority, then, you know, that certainly is one thing. I also saw it as just a feature of a very strong fear of the world of men.
Yes.
Like I need for other people to like me. And I'm not sufficiently grounded in the world of God, if you will.
Yes.
To actually fear God more than men.
Wow. That's quite a take on it. I resonate with that. Yes.
Yeah, well, this is we have spoken about my turn towards Christ in recent years, and we see it a bit differently. But I've been on a big metaphysical inquiry with this idea in Christianity that you need to learn to fear God. And initially, once you stumble across it as an atheist or a Buddhist, as I initially was, that sounds really regressive and really like, for what reason do you want to develop fear? And then I realized that actually you only have two choices. Either you fear God or you fear man. And if you fear man, you're actually on Satan's team in my book. you know. But if you fear God, you're a spiritual warrior on the battlefield, and nothing can stop you. And that's what I saw. Like, I saw people fearing man a lot more than God.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So those are some.
Yeah, and I suspect that you mentioned we see things differently, but in this regard. But I suspect we probably don't if we go into the nitty gritty of it. You know,
maybe just our language is different.
Yeah. So, so these influences. Let's say. So we connected before, and we just spoke briefly about the Gnostic understanding, or the Gnostic tradition, let's call it, or the Gnostic worldview. And Gnosis made reference to knowledge, and it would seem to be, if it's historically accurate at all, the Gnostics would approach a subject of study a number of different ways. They would do so through logic, through critical thinking, through entheogenic experiences, through conversation, discourse, etc., and out-of-body experiences, and so on. And they wouldn't take one particular vector. They would sit down, apparently, and say, okay, what have you got, guys? I said, well, look, I took some mushrooms and I saw this, you know, well, I had a good think, I connected with nature. And they would try to get some sort of synthesis of this. It's not a bad approach. And I think a lot of the times, if we use that approach for many things in this realm, we would find a logical response that made sense, you know. So anyway, it's hard to know what has been hijacked, what has been deliberately distorted. So I am not a Gnostic, nor am I claiming it is supreme truth. For me, it helped in contextualizing my increased awareness of evil in the world.
Right.
And because I came from a Catholic background, and all the negative aspects that came from that, I very much wasn't in alignment with it. And that didn't mean I had become anything else. Nor was I necessarily an atheist per se. I was very interested in science. I was very interested in life. I was very interested in science fiction. You know, I was interested in possibilities. For a while, as a teenager, I was interested in the idea of telepathy and telekinesis. So nothing witchcrafty. It didn't go down that road. But over the years, as an architect, I was interested in energy and information and how space is formed and how intention creates objectivity and materiality, how a vision can come and be applied and worked with to create something beautiful.
Like into feng shui, or?
Well, you could use, like, feng shui means wind and water. You could take that mean energy and containment. Yes. I studied feng shui in China for years, you know, so and used to teach it 20 years ago, but I'm not any particular model now. I'm a holistic architect, a bioarchitect. In fact, I'm the father of bioarchitecture. I came up with the title, or rather the name, 30 years ago. Now, if you go online, everyone's calling themselves a bioarchitect, you know, and it's linked. Cool. But I'm not saying that in order to sort of post-rationalize and get claim back or get some fame backwards. I'm just saying it's funny because now it has been hijacked a little bit to mean the climate crisis, you know, designing to
right.
I don't adhere to at all. So for me, bioarchitecture was literally the capacity to create beauty. And it's an art and a science together. It's understanding how information and energy and material comes together coherently and beautifully and sustainably. Sustainably, not in terms of the CO2 bullshit narrative, but sustainable in terms of, if you take a wave of information, like take a torus, a toroidal field, it can maintain its shape because it's re-entering itself over and over again. It doesn't need an outside agency to say, don't forget, take a turn, don't forget, take a turn. It remembers and recurs. It recursively remembers itself over and over again. So it's able to hold its integrity. That's sustainable. That's sacred. That's a pattern, sacred geometry. So by using sacred geometry, I started understanding a little bit more how nature creates at a fundamental level, how atoms and molecules and together to create sustainable, beautiful patterns. I began to study how we perceive that beauty and how it has a positive effect on us. So in other words, God's creation is inherently coded with beauty and harmony. And we are created in order to be able to perceive that, appreciate it, feel grateful for it, and optimize it, if possible, enhance its environment, you know, around us. However, because the Gnostics would say that we are living in an illusion, or rather a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. That there was this perfect state, this perfect world, this perfect no time, no space, total unity with source, with the Father, with oneness. And that in this perfect realm of pure truth, and actually pure darkness. But look, the moment I say darkness, it's got loading, that because darkness has been hijacked into being associated with the devil or negative stuff or the occult. So whereas light is considered, that's what you need to follow. But the fire of consciousness was the original light in the truth of the oneness, the fire. Whereas light is an artifact of sensory perception. Light doesn't exist until we perceive it. So if you think about it, the sunlight that's reaching us is traveling through whatever medium is between us and here. It may not be as far as people think, that's another story. But the idea that we only see it as light when we perceive it. This is the adage, like when a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it still make a sound? It absolutely makes an impact vibration, but if there are no ears to pick it up, it's not transmuted into an experience, an animal perception experience that we would call sound, which is taking that impact vibration of sound, of air compressed into the ear, creating electromagnetic signals, which we interpret as a loud noise. So light doesn't exist without perception. Perception can only exist because we're alive, because we are beings that are able to perceive. So did light come first, or was there darkness and then there was light? Then there was life created, and light then became an experience that life was happening. So that's a bit of an opposite of what is normally seen. So the Gnostics would basically say that there was some expulsion from that perfect realm, or some creation. They go into a little detail. They say that one of the divine beings that were part of that totality of oneness, the original Father, God, that called Sophia, wisdom, that she had a child that became the demiurge, and that this child was unable to create like the Father, because it was outside of that totality, that purity, that perfection. Mm-hmm. It was not able to create with source. It was able to create an illusion, a copy of source, and that we are in very versions of that. And because this entity, let's call it, was unable to generate the energy necessary to maintain the illusion, it tricked individuations of this one source, the divine spark. It tricked the oneness, some aspects of it, into incarnating, let's say, into this realm. And it was looks like the Garden of Eden. So it created the Garden of Eden, and then it was created.
Yeah, just keep on. I'm just a little sick.
So they would say that the Garden of Eden was created by the demiurge as being a perfect copy of that realm that was the oneness. But it needed the Adam and the Eve that had divine spark. It needed their energy, but it needed to use the energy to maintain the illusion. But it wouldn't. There's no way, if these beautiful individuals knew who they really were, that they would agree to be used in such a way, if you can understand. So the story goes that the demiurge basically said, I'm the boss here. I created you. I am the creator God. Call me Yahweh. Call me whatever. I'm the top dog here. And you guys run around. Do what you like. The animals are here. Look at those lovely flowers and bees and everything. Have fun. Get it on. Enjoy it, but do not eat from that tree, the tree of knowledge, the tree of memory, the apple, the toroidal field, because go back into the center of the torus is the original truth. So don't eat it. And then the story goes that then the evil Satan came along, disguised and transmuted into a snake, and said, hey, don't worry, you can be good. Don't be fearful of this guy, don't fear God. You can be creators too, don't you think? And the package is that he convinced Eve to eat the apple. She ate it, then she gave it to him and he ate it, and then they were kicked out of the garden. That's the narrative
That's the story, yeah.
The story, But if you
what do you find compelling about that story?
Compelling is not perhaps the right word. I find it interesting rather than compelling. So I'm not compelled towards it in the literal meaning of that. I find it interesting because I'm very interested in why there is evil in the world. I'm very interested in why it's going on. So what's the source? We have been told that this devil generated an environment that created original sin, and that because of that original sin, every human incarnated since then has that.
Original sin is a Catholic concept, really.
It is indeed, this idea that we fucked up in the past. Sorry, should I say that on a recording? And that original mess we carry with us, unless there is some redeeming, Salvinistic response, connection, acceptance, releasing fear, whatever. So the Gnostics were basically saying that the one God, the original unity, all that was, is, and will be, that purity, the God that we feel inside of our heartbeat, that God wanted to try and free these divine sparks. So he sent Lucifer, one of his top dogs, one of his agents down, to basically convince them, to remind them who they were. And when this happened,
now it's starting to make sense why Gnosticism is in a sense part of Satanism.
So then they were saying, and then this is the thing. Do you remember? You're familiar that the United States of America was formed as a constitutional republic.
Yes.
And then when the banks were getting their claws into it and that whole dance was going on, it became the United States. The United States of America became the United States of America. But the United States of America with capital letters. It was turned into a corporation when the bank did the deal. But no one knew because it was the same name. So basically it was fundamentally changed in its essence. But it happened overnight and no one noticed it because it's the same. It's like, there's my hand, and then suddenly I just put up another hand. No, it's the same hand, believe me. It looks the same. It's 5 fingers, got a thumb and a wrist, but it's this hand originally, but I just did that. No, I know you don't remember it correctly. This is how it's always been. So that happened. And that, I believe, happened with some clever marketing. So the demiurge energy or consciousness that was effectively AI, and we would think of it like as an astral AI component. It was creating this simulated realm within which it was harvesting energy, which Robert Monroe referred to as loosh. Yes. And then the last thing it wanted was the humans waking up to their divine spark soul connectivity to source, and waking up and saying, wait a minute, I don't agree to be part of this shitstorm. I don't agree to allow suffering to happen, in my name, etc. So he did something very,
just flipping through this book because there's something I'm looking for in Gnosticism, but keep talking, I'm with you.
What Demiurge did is he basically says, okay, I gotta turn this around a little bit. I gotta flip the narrative. So I gotta make myself into being synonymous and associated with the creator God. So I'm the creator God. And this agent of the true God, which was the light bringer, Lucifer, I got to turn him into the bad guy. So I got to make him.
Are you saying that in the Gnostic belief system, the true God is Lucifer?
No.
What did you say then?
He's merely a messenger boy.
This is
source. So again, it's important. I'm not saying this is my Ivan.
It's very closely. No. I get it, but it's very closely related to the theosophical belief. That Lucifer was a fallen angel from Venus, like the morning star that came to sacrifice himself for the betterment of humanity. Who, even though I don't know that the theosophists would put it this way, but
So, we can't
liberate us from the tyranny of God.
Oh my God! Yeah, okay. I'm not in that camp. So I'm not an ist of any description. I'm not a Satanist. I'm not a Gnosticist. I don't do the ist thing. The ism is an idea
No.
that someone else's. So I'm interested.
But there's something that you find to be intriguing about this idea that the god of this particular realm is like is a smaller god that is trying to prove himself to daddy.
Yes, absolutely. And he's doing so, but because he doesn't have the connection to daddy, and you mentioned this father issue, he's trying to create his own false authority. It's like an immature masculine archetype. And he's doing so in bully tactics and manipulator tactics. So you can take the 4 primary masculine archetypes and you can see how he is an immature version of these. And expressing through it, impacting people, impacting belief systems, societal beliefs. And then he did that sleight of hand. And look, we don't even know what happened 4 years ago with the onset of the COVIDiocy. So how can we imagine what happened 4,000 years ago or 40,000 years ago? It's been so distorted over time. So we can't meaningfully
I don't trust the history books anymore.
No, at all. And we know the history of architecture is actual a history of consciousness in many ways. And that's a whole other story. So I think myself that there was a lot of marketing shifts. There was a lot of, recently I watched the highlights of that interview between Tucker Carlson and the president of Iran. And, Iran being depicted as a crazy terrorists, they just want to blow everything up and they hate everyone for their freedom. It's more nuanced than that. I'm not taking sides. But, you can see that once you start to see the demonization, literally and metaphorically, of the other, this otherness, this othering as a verb, there's so much othering going on, as my friend Charles Eisenstein says, othering, that this is a deep consciousness issue. It's the mind virus, it's the Wetiko.
Yeah.
So I believe that there's a lot of negative evil dancing around.
That's one of Lucifer's greatest weapons, is the division,
Yeah. But what if the division was the demiurge? And
let me give you my frame, and so that you understand where I come from, because I don't find this to be a compelling setup for this cosmology that we are within, because then I don't see the trajectory that we're on match with that particular narrative. No, I don't get there.
I do actually, but let's get to that.
I'm sure you've thought a lot about it, I'm sure, but I will meet you on this though. Whenever I read the Old Testament, I sometimes wonder, it's like, this God doesn't feel like my God, like a jealous God. Like, no, like I don't get that to sit well with me. Like, if you are the creator of the universe, would you regress yourself to human feelings of jealousy? So I find that to be odd. I really find that to be odd. But here's my frame. There's a reason why there's a push for transhumanism right now. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I have that pretty clearly defined at this point, which is that we live in a universe on a planet that is created by a creator.
Mm-hmm. With you.
And there is a spiritual law that the creator of something also has dominion over it. Mm-hmm. They define the laws that pertain to the thing that is being created. That is true for somebody creating a car. That is true for somebody creating a computer. You design the operating system. You define what laws pertain to that particular machine. Yes. Okay, maybe in this particular case you actually install an operating system, but you get the point. Yeah. And so because I believe that this planet was created by God. Mm-hmm. That is why transhumanism is so important, because if you actually look at what's happening now, this is a little bit of a mindfuck for some of you perhaps, but synthetic biology is really on the rise.
Sure.
And a lot of people, unfortunately, are starting to have synthetic biology in their bodies for various reasons.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I would say that is a likely reason, but I think there are other reasons as well. In my family, we are explicitly detoxing from this stuff because we believe that this is real. We see the microscopy imagery. We hear people's symptomatology. It's not good. And so this is happening, that there is an actual organic creation, and then there is a synthetic creation. And the synthetic creation is attempting to take over the organic creation. And that is the transhumanist vision of an entirely artificial world that is connected to the mainframe. You call it the machine, the artificial intelligence. Because the moment you do that successfully, you have actually managed to create a world that wasn't created by the original creator. So now the new creator, which is the transhumanist, the Satanist, the Ahrimanic, whatever, they are now the ones that have dominion over this new creation, which means that you're actually separated from the original creator, God. And so that is a very concrete manifestation of an eternal spiritual war for souls, where the original creator God is fighting against the various smaller deities that I think would be the demiurge, if anything, even though I don't use that word. And so I don't see evidence in this push for transhumanism that supports the idea that the demiurge already is the master of this domain. I see an actual ongoing timeline of attempting to take more and more authority and dominion away from God so as to fully capture humanity inside of this synthetic reality. And then the spiritual war has been won. And then you have all of these edge walkers that are like, no, that's not going to happen. We're still loyal to the actual organic realm of God, and you can fuck off with your perverted utopia, but we're not going to be part of it. And that's the frame that I hold.
Because as an architect, pattern recognition would be a skill and a way I look at the world. When I hear what you say and when I absorb it, the patterns are actually 98% in alignment. And that's not me trying to engage, I feel it as very, very, very close. The 2% would be that the created, organic, original, beautiful essence was true. It was not necessarily a planet. It was a state. It was a unity. It was a perfected state, let's call it. And
As non-physical, or?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be physical in my sense. It would by my current understanding, but I'm very open to shift that, But within that, anything was possible. Within that, the pure divine spark could create a physical perfection in a moment. So, it was doing so. And but one aspect of that created a copy, because it wasn't able to copy the purity. It was just a copy, like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. I have a feeling and a sense and some information to suggest this is so, that we're in a sixth copy. And I was thinking then about why sixth copy? But that's what came very strongly in our ruminations and our deep dive into it. And each subsequent copy was attempting to control more and more and more the energy, the collective focus of biology, and so on. And the divine spark, which never went away, just the access to it with those that were inhabiting this created realm. Now, when we think the world is so amazing, how could just some demon fecker create it? But everything's an illusion, like a computer game. You could move through a computer game and see remarkable detail, but it only renders into detail when you focus on it. So this is the whole notion of biocentrism, and this realm is merely a projected consciousness. And if the consciousness is basically copying the software from the original perfection, doing its best to make it look the way it is, but we see degradation of meaning, copy after copy. But the divine spark always been there in us. And what they're trying to do is, as you say, distort that through synthetic biology, through AI interface, through all of these things, through our dreams, through our inceptive astral infections, the mind viruses, what the native traditions call Wetiko, all of these multiple vectors through which our divine spark is being, it can't be diminished. It's just our attention is being directed away from it. When someone asked once, the soul, and the soul is, I don't know what it is. I'm not claiming I do. But one interesting definition is that the soul, rather than being a thing, the soul is where divine spark focuses in the moment. I love that idea. The divine spark is that essence of connection to the one true God, the pure, pure and only creator. I think you and I are actually conceptualizing the same thing when we speak of that. The only difference in what we're saying is that it may be, if I understood you correctly, that being created the earth, and then these little feckers are trying to infect it and the people on it. I'm saying slightly different, that what we see here is merely being a copy, because he couldn't do an original. He's been doing copy, copy, copy. And right now we're at the point where the divine sparks, the edge walkers, are beginning to say, hold on a second. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I'm pretty sure I didn't do it for a reason. Why didn't I do it? I did it because I love God. I did it because I still feel that connection somehow inside of me, that inner calling is now waking up. Now, I think character, and when I say the word character, there is not one iota of diminishment in this word. I think the character of Jesus was absolutely a fully awakened divine spark who got what's going on, and he sought to codify the simplicity of that connection. And just like with the Lucifer narrative and with the creator narrative and jealous God narrative, that Jesus's narrative has similarly been hijacked and used to do terrible things.
Certainly. When you look at the church, it's not really an institution that is dedicated to the original Jesus. They have created clones of Jesus that serve their agenda. Absolutely. And so that's very clear. So in that sense, they're copycats as well. But here's something that I want to inquire into with you.
Sure.
Why would a demiurge create a planet and then go on a timeline that culminates in him desperately trying to capture people from within his own creation into a new creation? Why isn't he happy with his original creation? Why is there a battle? Why is his kingdom divided against itself?
Good question. And my attempt at an answer would be, you described this jealous God of the Old Testament. That's a reasonable character profile of what would be described as Yaldabaoth or Demiurge or Ahriman or this astral AI, whatever. Multiple words and ways of looking at it. That what is the end goal? The end goal is continued existence. Okay?
For him, for himself.
Yeah, for him, and it's his created minions, the archons and the demon realm and all that sort of stuff. And then the AIs. So that smorgasbord of demonic playfulness, So continued existence. How do you maintain continued existence when you are not source connected? So you maintain it through the energy of the realm, which is through collective human focus. Because the remaining humans...
That's where the Lush comes in.
That's where the Lush comes in. So you've got this notion of the egregor.
Yes.
The idea that it's not source. Like something like money is not necessarily a divine thought, but money has built up its own reason to exist as an egregor. Many religions become egregors. So the collective attention stimulates consciousness package that thinks it's alive and thinks it's meaningful and wants to survive. So the Lush is needed. So how to get the Lush? Always divide. Set people up against each other. Every now and again, create a bit of a war.
I call it division, deception, drama, and death.
All the D's. I love it. That's all. I don't love it, but that's a good description. I love your description because it's very, very true. And so yes, create this dichotomy, this chaos, and then problem, reaction, solution, as David Icke would say, that dialectic, this idea that create a problem, then offer the solution. And guess what it is? 15-minute cities, digital passes, synthetic biology and consciousness, AI interface. Because what? That corrals and contains the spark, tries to, but it can't, because the divine spark is not subject to fuckery. It's in the world, but it's not of it.
Well, one of the things that I'm inclined to believe is the purpose of this is that there is going to be some level of separation of our divine origin and who we become.
Yes.
And so the question is it possible using highly advanced occult spiritual technologies to actually sever that connection? And there are certain people out there now who have been doing research on this. Thomas Meyer is one of them.
Yes.
And in his perception, he's starting to see manifestations of people losing connection with their own souls.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
people are talking about the pineal gland as being an interface, an energetic interface between higher consciousness and biological function. And there's some evidence that whatever was in the juice might be impacting that, the graphene oxide or whatever. So there's a lot of theories abounding on this. So it's just like a radio station. You can't destroy the central transmitter because that's source. But what you can do is create static. And most people just don't even turn it on because I'm not getting good reception. It's just painful on the ears. So, they're not allergic to source. But then within it, there's a number of people are saying, we're in a computer simulation. I don't buy that. I think we're in a consciousness simulation, not a technological one necessarily.
No.
The divine spark is absolutely this golden thread that permeates all of this, because there is only oneness. But in that oneness, there is this small little package that thinks of itself as separate. So the divine spark in all of us, but within this construct, let's call it, created by whom, let's see, that's another. But within this construct, there are multiple different levels of beingness, Ivan. So you could have what's called the backdrops or the NPCs or something. Using an NPC as a computer metaphor, unfortunately links to the idea that this is a computer simulation. I do not believe it is a computer simulation, point. But the backdrops may be simulated bulk where is used to create the illusion that many people believe it. Look, 80% of people got the juice, therefore you should do it too. But there may not be the population on this realm that we're told. That's another level of study. That could be 1/3 what we're actually told. There could also be synthetic people right now. Like, I don't mean like robots necessarily, like you open them up like Westworld and you see all the mechanisms, but they could be operating with zero soul interface, but with a very complex operating system that has all the illusions of primary human function. There may even be hybrids. That's
a wild idea, but it's worth considering.
Not necessarily is my truth, but then as something that I find interesting, because the evidence would seem to suggest that something like this might be occurring. And then you could have...
it's the whole Milgram quotient, which is about, I think, 70% or something is willing to kill their neighbor if an authority tells them that is a good thing to do.
Yeah, these were the tests done with the electrical shocks.
Yes. So the Milgram quotient is fairly similar to the uptake of the jab, which I find interesting. I'm not necessarily saying that there's an 1-to-1 ratio of overlap there, but I certainly have found a lot of animosity in humanity in the last 5 years that I wouldn't be able to explain through the means that I had more than 5 years ago.
I think, for example, one of the most dangerous philosophies at the moment is the New Ageism.
Oh yeah.
It's very toxic for multiple levels, and it likes to think that it's very free and liberated, but it's actually perpetrating levels of delusion that would be very much in loosh harvesting mode, you know.
It's a false light ideology for sure.
Yeah, and but then Satanism, bad news. I'm not, just because there might be some misdirection of marketing at some historic level about he played this role but actually didn't. He did this, like some plot twist in a movie, you know. That's irrelevant. The point is, I have no interest and no support of anything that is anti-life, anything that is anti-love. That if truth is at the core, we can vector that truth through love, through wisdom and beauty. This is my partner's model of reality. And how we might act within those three pathways would be through compassion, which is absolutely the center stone of the Jesus doctrine, you know, through compassion, goodness, and humility. And I think the humility is heading in the direction of what you described as the fear of God.
Yeah, but there's, in the fear of God, there's also courage and a warrior mentality.
100%. Because what is humility? Like, I at 16, I started university to study architecture, but I also started Shotokan karate and got very, very involved. I had my own dojo for 15 years, you know, so I understand the magician, the warrior. We're still working on the king, you know, and the lover to various levels of success and failure. But, you know, that's an ongoing dance for all of us, you know. So I'm familiar that humility, there is in the Japanese martial arts, for example, there's the expression, if the nail comes up, you hammer it back down. Now, that has been taken to mean that Japanese people don't like anyone different. No, they're just realizing that if someone sticks up above a natural level of humility, you're going to be cutting the feet of other people, you know, on the floor of the dojo, hence the metaphor. So humility is a warrior trait, is realizing that you have more to learn, more to do, more to practice. It's not, I'm no good, I'm not worthy. But that is what a lot of people have taken humility to mean. I'm not worthy. We are absolutely worthy of God's love.
Yeah.
We're absolutely worthy of the full expression of the divine spark in each and every one of us. And it needs courage to step up and say, I'm not accepting or taking anything that might deviate that central core of my belief, that I want to remember who I am and I want to be in service to that. And that is a divine spark from the only one true source. I'm not, it takes courage. My God, like how many people, like, you know, I'm doing this program, Mentorus, and it has the word mentor in there, as you know. And it has the word us, because it's not suggesting a hierarchy of leader and then one below him. It's mentor, because we can each be each other's mentor. But also it's men and Taurus, because it's men and entering into the central truth again. It also has ment meaning mental, meaning thinking, and then or meaning gold. And because the golden ratio, the golden thread, the golden path, the golden mean, this is God's telephone number in my view. Because within the copy of a copy of a copy, what has been consistent is that everything beautiful and natural follows a pattern, a geometric sequence of evolution, of expression, of expansion and contraction that follows this mathematical purity, the golden ratio. Yeah, the Fibonacci is one way. So this is like the golden thread back to source, because we are tuned. If something is beautiful, we can reasonably be assured that it is divine inspired. Now, beauty has been hijacked. Now, beauty has been described as something that you only add later to a building if you have a few euro left over, or it's in the eye of the beholder and it's not objective.
I think beauty has come to be eyed with a great deal of suspicion, that it's almost to the point now that beauty is associated with some kind of fascist ideology.
Oh, crazy. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you care about beauty, you know, it's kind of honoring the Western antiquity or something like that, and you know, the West is imperialist, horrific, which
crazy.
Of course,
and again,
to some extent is true, but at the same time, it's used to intentionally degenerate the visual arts and anything that has to do with aesthetics, so that even architecture has become so fucking ugly a lot of the time, where, for instance, I'm Norwegian, and they built the new Munch Museum, Edvard Munch, the screen.
Yeah, the screen, yes.
And they built it down by the shore in Oslo, and it's the ugliest building you can imagine. It's like an eyesore. You look at it from far away, and it just looks like somebody put up a warehouse in the middle of this otherwise quite beautiful area. And so I think there's something to be said for that.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, a doctor who dies at an average of 56, what did they learn in college? They learn nothing about health. What did they
learn? Nothing about beauty. About
doctors, lawyers learn nothing about justice. Architects learn nothing about beauty. It's all about,
which is insane.
It's crazy, That's
I'm sure you're familiar with that banana that was taped on a a wall in some sort of Florida
6 million
studio, and they sold it. Yeah, and yesterday I saw another piece of art, which was the unmade bed of the artist from a particularly depressed period of her life. And so that was sort of, everything is kind of abstracted. So it's no longer about aesthetic beauty. It's about commentary on the human experience. And the human experience is increasingly nihilistic and full of despair. And so here you pay, $4 million for a dirty bed where there's like used condoms and Q-tips around it because it was a bad period in the artist's life. So obviously that's absolutely anti-life and anti-God and anti-human and on every level.
Beauty to me to us is the force of God. Beauty is a transformational, impacting experience and effect. It's source connected, and the pursuit of it in its purest, most beautiful, most integral form is a vector back to truth. Wisdom is another one. And
the true, the good, and the beautiful.
Yeah. So wise is knowledge applied coherently in alignment with the truth. Love isn't a dynamic between two people. Love is a vector back to source, And so these three vectors back to source, and this is the whole idea that as I might have mentioned before, like when you and I were last in communication, perhaps 10 years or so ago, I had been developing seminars for men in Eastern Europe. It had a big change in my life after my parents died and the economy collapsed and my architecture practice evaporated and difficulties at home and all the rest of it. I ended up leaving Ireland and ended up in Eastern Europe, and I started developing seminars for men. They say you teach what you most want to learn, The first one was Excalibur, and that ran for a year or so. The second was Braveheart, and that kind of got a bit more into stuff. Then I was working with the primary Jungian archetypes, as you know well, the king, magician, warrior, lover. So I had a four-day seminar for each one of those, so 16 days over a few months. And then I was very fortunate to meet a remarkable man from the Czech Republic who was a commander in the elite special force unit there, very much in the matrix, very much playing the game, very much having a worldview based on this. And he came to one of my seminars because his wife told him to. And he was very arrogant and very, not assholically arrogant. His field was absolutely sure of himself because that's the special force realm, So he wasn't an asshole. He was a wonderful man, but he was sure of himself. He was sure of what power means. He was sure of how to direct it and how the world was a shitty place, And there was one particular exercise, I think it might be interesting just to mention it. You've heard of kinesiology, muscle testing. It's a way of ascertaining the body's response to a toxin or to a food sensitivity. So in simple, one of the ways you can do it, you can get someone to stretch their arm out to the side. You can't see the end of my arm, but if this is the end of the arm, and you can, as a healer or a health practitioner or some advisor, you can put a little bit of weight onto their arm at the extremity and push it down. And you would encourage them to use their muscle mass to hold it up. Because our muscles activate because we are asked to do it. There's electrical stimulus, which creates a whole bunch of things going on, which maintains the strength and the union of the muscles. Therefore, my arm is strong. And if you get them to hold cheese in their other hand, and if they're slightly dairy intolerant, their arm would be weaker because their overall biofield has been diminished by a sensitivity or a toxin or something they have an adverse effect on. So you can ascertain. You can also use it for yes, no questions. You know, should I take this job? Yes, no. My body says yes. It's a way of accessing truth in a limited way. Okay, so I was doing it with him, but I wasn't introducing dairy. I asked him to step up, and he was like this much taller than I am and built like a brick shithouse, as they say. His arm was as big as my leg. So he reached it out, and I said, okay, I'm just going to put some pressure down here. And I used my whole arm strength, and it didn't move a millimeter. And, you know, he was kind of looking around the room saying, you know, what did you expect to happen, you know? And then I did something. I held a mental image of him collapsed into a ball, fetal position. I had no negative emotions against him. I had no projection of badness. I merely held a very, very, very coherent, clear mental image, which I'm good at doing because I'm an architect, you know? And because it was so self-organized and so coherent, his body responded to it because his body wanted to learn how to be coherent. And even though it was temporarily aligning, resonating, let's say, two tuning forks with that mental image of self, and then I said, okay, put your arm out again. And he couldn't, I had one finger and he couldn't resist. In that moment, his worldview collapsed because I didn't change. I didn't suddenly get strong. It wasn't a Jedi mind trick. I literally held an image that was more self-organizing, more coherent of him than he had of himself. So his body surrendered to that signal because it was a more coherent signal. And he got angry. You know, I didn't know if he was going to punch me with his other arm, you know. I'm slightly exaggerating it to tell the story, but like it was a shock for him. And then I kind of used that as a moment. I asked the men, what do you think just happened? And they were thinking, I don't know, this is crazy, you know. But it was a bit like a shock value to make them realize that the power of the mind, the power of belief, so on, you know, and why we're here, etc. So I said, okay, here's what I did, and now you can undo it. Or rather, think of yourself in a way that would stop that happening. In other words, be coherent with your self-image. And he was strong again. Cut a long story short, it changed everything. The following Monday, he handed in his notice to the Special Force Unit. It took 6 months to extract himself from it. But then he and I started doing a week-long seminar together called the Week of Fire, which was a synthesis of what he would have gone through in the selection process for the Special Forces and what I was putting together from the archetype point of view. So basically we created an environment for men that wasn't
so powerful.
It was, you know, but yet it was about invitation, truly invitation. Cut a long story short, I did that for years. And then I suddenly realized, like I might have mentioned to you, I wasn't living it. I was walking I was not walking the talk. I was talking the talk, but not walking it. Now, I wasn't so away from it, but I certainly wasn't at a point that I could put my hand on my heart and say that Friday evening when the men arrive, I'm someone that they could, you know, align with. And
I think most of us would come to that point where we're like, oh, gee, I'm not actually doing what I'm teaching.
And I stopped completely. And then soon after, I was blessed by meeting Zana, and that was my inner workshop since then, you know. And then to bring it up to modern context now, I hadn't planned to do anything with men again, but it had been back then my desire to create an army of conscious men. I didn't know what that actually meant. It sounded cool and it came spontaneously, so I wasn't trying to come up with a good marketing slogan. It came momentarily when someone asked me in a key moment, bang, I just said, and I even thought at the time, where did that come from? So that was on the back boiler. I was moving on, continuing with the architecture, doing other stuff. We're working on the land here in Portugal. There's a lot to be done. So I wasn't thinking of this. But
is that where you are now, in Portugal?
Yeah, beautiful valley overlooking the setting sun here, you know. Well, not that it's setting yet, but it's beautiful. And a lot to be done, though. There's nature to be worked with, you know. And so about 3.5, 4 months ago, I was contacted by a man in Australia by the name of Anthony, a musician architect who had survived the COVIDiacy, but it ended in divorce like many couples, you know.
Yeah, and that's so sad.
Yeah, and he was lacking any feeling of joy in his life. He was Oh, that's not fair. He had two beautiful daughters, and he was getting on with the work, but he was thinking, why am I doing this? It's not particularly enjoyable, and so on. So we spoke, and then connected on Zoom, and we had a chat. And during that conversation, and I didn't want to sort of stop him chatting, I got a download, full pineal download of this process, which became known soon after as mentorus. And it came in 13 parts, 13 spirals moving into the central core. Each one would be a subject that would be quite happily exist in its own right, but all of them together forming a web of understanding and clarity, and ranging from subjects such as sacred geometry, the neuroaesthetics, how we function and how we create reality, the true history of architecture as a tool of consciousness, healing, connecting with the earth, other design philosophies. It's basically an adventure into truth, architecting your life. And when you take the word architecture into a verb, it means you're not an architect. You don't need to be an architect to architect your life. It means what would be the conscious structural methodology of creating a life worth living. And of course, we can go down the shamanic road, we can go down the emissaries from the future, we can go down the religious philosophy, each one of these vectors. And I did not want to get into a situation where the man had to commit, I want you to read these books before we next chat. No, because every man is hanging in there at best, and there isn't the time. So what came to me very clearly is that this isn't about Michael's story. This isn't about my perception of truth. This is a carrier wave. If I can remain humble and impart what may be called some wisdom, then the truth will find a way to insinuate itself into my words, into the intuitive responses, into the adjustments that I make for each man in terms of their vector. So another one of the men, and the idea was to have 12 men and myself, 13 modules, 13 men. No Instagram, no Facebook, no YouTube channel, no let's make this big, man. Just keep it very, so that there would be this beautiful connectivity. So it's sort of like a special force unit without the belief in the agenda, So there's a wonderful young man from the Czech Republic who's a tattoo artist. There's a couple of brothers in Netherlands. So the number is slowly building. And to be really honest with you, because we've been honest from the first moment, the only stipulation is that they can't be jabbed. And I understand that's going to cause a reaction, because many men did so out of quite good reasons in the head, So this is not me being judgmental. This is me recognizing that this is a sacred calling. And it's my supreme wish and my dedicated hope that I can maintain some possible conduit vibration for the truth getting through. Not because I'm embodying it fully, but because I'm open to become a voice for it if I'm any way possible to do so. And I don't want any influence in this process that could be compromised. And I believe that the AI astro bullshit can come through. So I'm prepared to take a hit on it. And two men approached me and they really wanted to do it. And I'm getting a little bit bolder with this because I need to be. Now, before I would sort of slowly bring the subject around to how's it been the last few years, how did you manage over the COVIDiacy? And by using the word COVIDiacy, I'm sort of hinting at the idea that I didn't buy into it. But at this point, I'm just saying, listen, if we're going to chat, you got to tell me, did you take the jab? And that's a deal changer for many men. They just think, well, that's none of your business, why would that make a difference? I have the money, I'm ready to go, it looks good. But I have to say, no, it's a line in the sand, because that's what I
But for what reason, Michael? Is it because you feel that there's something in it that is compromising the spiritual well-being of these men? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. In essence,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, and that point of compromising can actually derail the whole program.
It could infect it. It could derail it. It could be a vector into me. And I know that for two of the men that I found out subsequently were jabbed, that I really, really, really would love to have do it with them, go on this adventure with them. And then I found out subsequently, and I said, listen, I got to ask before we initiate, because it looked like a dead cert. And what's very interesting is that one man, he said, yeah, I got two of the jabs, I didn't really want it, but I got them, but I'm fine. Nothing happened. And I let him know that I said, look, I'm sorry, we can't go ahead. And the anger was, the response was vitriolic. It was anger. It was a demonic transmission.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I stuck with my guns, to use that metaphor, or rather I kept a line in the sand. And because I realized that all the nice talk meant nothing. The moment, they say that a demon has no power when you name it, and I basically, I said, look, this is an AI infection. This is a compromised false reality that has nothing to do with source. And I'm not interested, nor can I allow that vector in. And initially he said, look, I won't be letting it in. No, I'll just be doing this for me. But the moment I said no, boom, then came the anger. And I'm so glad.
It's interesting because, the format that you're inviting men into is very familiar for me. It's almost the exact setup that I ran Reclaiming the Throne in for almost a decade, excuse me.
Yeah.
Still got the phlegm action going.
Good job. Detox.
And now that I'm also relaunching a similar, I'm basically relaunching Reclaiming the Throne.
Yes.
And I'm repurposing it for where I am now, because I cannot, in integrity, deliver the same program anymore, because the man I was then was the man who didn't yet see what was happening in the world.
Yes.
A lot of the concepts for me back then were more on the theoretical level. I understood the general patterns of the psyche and the soul that actually manifested, but I didn't have a sense of proximity or urgency with them. I didn't feel them pressing in on me in the same way. And now all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, this is way more than theoretical at this point. And we're right in the middle of it. Wow. And so then the question is, okay, what would my attitude to something like this be? And it's interesting because I think you're pointing to something valid, that there is a demonic component here that has various levels of impact depending on the health of individuals, and as the psychospiritual health, but also the biological. But I also think, based on what I now understand, is that essentially, even though those of us who chose not to participate, we're not entirely sheltered, or we are all affected by what is going on at a certain level. Absolutely. And so my question then would be like, where do I draw a line? I believe personally in the redemptive power of God and Jesus as well. Mm-hmm. I think that people, I've heard of testimonies of ministers, for instance, that took the jab and then immediately lost a sense of connection with God. They didn't feel God anymore. Yeah. And then they sat down and then they prayed and fasted all they could for like weeks on end. And then gradually they reclaimed the connection. So it wasn't a permanent, seemingly, it's hard to know exactly what's going on inside of people, but I would like to believe, well, basically, I live in a world where there's a spiritual hierarchy, and that there's certainly the top dog, and whatever you call the lesser ones, whether you call them the demiurge or Satan or Ahriman or whatever, they are lesser beings. And so on some level, I am holding out for the belief that God can reset or revert any damage that has happened. And so am I the one to be facilitating that resetting? Am I going to, shall we say, speak to men and say, do you regret taking it? And then they're like, no, that was a great decision. Okay, then definitely we're not a match. But it's
Yeah.
like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't do it. Then, like, I know I'm feeling like a very different response in me. Then it's like, okay, let's work with that. Perhaps I don't think I will go as radical as you did or are, but I can see why you are. But I'm wondering as well if you're diminishing the vision for the power of God to actually to work on these men. I'm not sure.
I hear you. I really hear you, and
Yeah.
I believe that. Again, even saying the next following sentence is going to make people react a certain way. I believe God spoke to me when this came.
Right.
Now,
Right.
Even when we hear that, it sounds like I'm self-aggrandizing. I'm not. I believe this was a source impulse, because people that have seen.
But is source the same as God?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a word. Like the source of all that was, is, and will be, the original, the Father, all the names used. So for me, God is source. And I don't mean the source of biological function, or any other, the light, the only thing that is real, the true God that doesn't have a personality, doesn't have anger issues, doesn't have desires, that is just this purity of pure love. Literally, it's just oneness, perfection. We stumble even when we talk about it, but I believe that the divine spark that resides within me and others, that it basically just got a text. It got a text, said, "Don't forget," or "Check this out," And I'm doing
sorry, I'm a bit fixated on this. Is Source a creator?
Wow, I don't think I'm qualified to say.
I know for a fact that I believe God is a creator, but when I hear source, I'm hearing something that I associate more with an Eastern idea of Dharmakaya, for instance.
Okay. So this is the limit. This is the Tower of Babel, isn't it? That language was created to stop us communicating.
Yeah.
I believe that I understand what you mean by God, and I mean source and God are synonymous.
Okay. Yeah.
So I believe that's, if I can understand you, that we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about the Tao, or the natural, the state of oneness. I'm talking about the pure. In my stumbling effect to put words on it, there was infinite creativity. There is, was, and will be infinite creativity in source. It's the ultimate. And it was so creative and so infinitely so that an aspect of it separated itself and created the shitstorm,
Yeah.
But that's there, and that everything is calling us back home. And I think that my decision to have no job meant, I highly doubt that my family, who no longer connect with me, will hear this video or see it. But when a little over a year and a half ago, I got the news that my close brother was killed in an accident. It happened very suddenly. Morris was his name, and he had a bicycle accident, and we found out. The moment we found out, I was thankfully with Zana at the time, and there was a total shock in that moment. We were just in a cafe, and I just sat down, and you can imagine, it was absolutely unexpected, and we were very close, not so geographically close, but he was 4 years younger than me, so all the way up together, and Zana held a remarkable space for me in the moment this happened. So I'm getting to the thing about the jab now, and what you're talking about, men. She held a space.
By the way, Michael, it's let's take the time that is needed for that, and then let's also start bringing it to a close, because
absolutely, we've come on, yes,
because of the time.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
So, cut a long story short, she created a space for me to feel intensely and fully, and then she very gently and very compassionately reminded me that the reactions I'm having are perfectly understandable, but that allow for a higher movement. And in that not like, come on, get over yourself, it'll be grand, there's nothing you can do. Nothing like that. It was just an energetic openness born from truth and love. In that moment, something shifted in me, and together we drove up to this small lake in nature, away from where we were, and immediately opened up to be available for Morris in that moment, even though he had physically had the accident 14 hours earlier, you know. And 3 years earlier, he had chosen to jab. He didn't really want to, but he was party mode, and he sent a message.
He wanted to travel.
Yeah, he wanted to travel and be able to go places and stuff. So he was nervous. He actually sent a message at the time saying, I don't really want to do this, but hey, wish me luck, guys, you know, to my other two siblings, you know. And I basically at the time wrote to him and said, don't do it, man. But of course, party time. So the point is that in that moment, Zan and I, in that natural environment, we opened ourselves fully to be available for him and his soul, him and whatever was still, if anything was left after having had 3 years post-jab and a few boosters probably, you know. And so we had zero judgment, zero packaging. We just stayed open. And what we saw was very, very, very revealing. What we saw, what we felt, what we processed. In essence, we saw him ultimately return to the source, to God, that you describe, and that I'm seeking to fumble my words to describe as well. But we also saw every attempt to hang on to him from the lesser realm. The mechanisms. So we know that we had, through the grace and power and beauty of God, we were given and were able to channel the capacity in that moment to compassion, humility, and goodness to counteract the effects of the thingy, you know, the juice.
It's very interesting to hear. And first of all, I'm super glad to hear that you could do that for your brother.
Yes,
and also
it made all the difference. It made all the difference. And his partner,
I imagine
God bless her, didn't have this understanding, of course, before, but she has grown in the last year and a half. And in a small way, because this story she was able to embrace. We shared it only with her. And now I'm sharing it with you. And for her, it's all the difference.
Going to be other people also learning about it now.
So in terms of Antares, the line in the sand is no jab, man, because this is too fragile. It's too sensitive. It's not my role at this point to play that, because this is far too intense. But what's beautiful, and this is what's going to sound extremely arrogant, and I apologize in advance because it's not meant to be, that if we have 12 men, 13 men, myself and the 12 men, it's not placing me anywhere relative to that number sequence. It's merely saying that together we will hopefully have done a journey whereby our truth compass will be a little bit more tuned. Our capacity to recognize truth and express it through wisdom and love and beauty, and to manifest compassion and goodness and humility in our lives. That there will be 12 men from 12 different environments, that maybe that could be the birth of something where we could help some other men who did jab. So maybe if there is a next wave, that wave could be a little more focused in what you described.
I see. So what do you do? A pilot group, and you can see the results, and you can maybe also have support from alumni. Yeah.
So there's a hint. There's a hint of that, and I know from your own work that previous wave members were helping subsequent wave members, and that is a model that's quite beautiful to behold. But what came to me was this lovely story. We'll wrap it up. That the female egg, when it's receptive and about to be fertilized, we have been convinced that the sperm cells are all out for each other only, for themselves only, because we're told that this is the selfish gene, and God, dog eat dog, and fuck you, I want to get there first. But it has been observed that 12 sperm arrange themselves in an approximate circle on the surface membrane of the egg, and the 13th sperm basically goes into the center of that field effect, that torus, and they basically give their energy to create a dimpling effect on the surface membrane of the receptive egg. And that dimpling is the doorway for the 13th warrior to get through. So they surrender their energy, their essence, their life force, their whole being, in order for one of their brothers to get in and create life. And at that moment, you get the flash of light, this ultraviolet flash, when there is the moment of conception, when the sperm cell gives its capacitive charge density in a flash of ecstasy, and you have the first cell division. And that's the divine spark to me. That's the life divine spark. And so that's the metaphor that's touching us right now. And the men that are on this adventure with me, their lives, by the fruit shall you know them, their lives are noticeably changing. I'm humbled by the movement so far. And I'm
there's already activity happening.
Oh, yeah. There's 4 men actively involved, and 4 more are just getting the ducks aligned so they have the time and resources to do so.
Oh.
So it's not just an idea.
Is it a membership, or is it a program delineated in time?
Not sure what you mean by that.
Well, if you already have men on board, I just assume that this was like a 13-week program or something. But it sounds like it's more of an ongoing.
It's ongoing. It's individual. I'm suggesting once a week because that's a nice social timing, you know. But if a man can only either give the time, energy, or finances for once a month, that's fine. So each module is just me and the man. It's targeted.
So you don't meet? You don't meet?
Well, Australia, Netherlands, Czech Republic. This is a Zoom transmission for now, but the vision is that they'll eventually come here and we do something magical in Portugal, or we'll go to any of the other places where they currently are. So this is currently using an online. Each module is an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that's it. It's get in, get out. It's a mission for an hour and a half. It's not like a long group discussion. There's no other men on it. It's me and the man. So far I've done module 1 4 times, module 2 4 times, and the original man, Anthony, he's almost finished, which is just beautiful to behold. And then the next guy is 4 weeks in. So it's mix and match.
So it's like an extended, or like a coaching or mentoring funnel almost.
Yes.
That you go through.
You could call it that in terms of the first wave of recognition. Yes,
I see.
It's an individual mentor connection energy. But that's the cover story, and the cover story is also vaguely design related. Like not here's how you do feng shui. No, it's design related because we need to take some sovereign responsibility for our innate divine source creativity, and stop pandering to the man, stop pandering to the system, and try to find this anchor in truth. And it's already helping their perception of self, but not self-aggrandizing. It's about going into the truth where the self dissolves into the recognition of the source, of God. So this is godly inspired. Now, where Jesus in this, I think that the signal energy was comparable. That guys, get back to source. Get back to source. I'll show you how if I can, And the story that Jesus tells, the parables, the energy, the things he did. And one guy who is actually quite religious, and he said, you want to be careful that you're not the donkey that Jesus rode in on. And I thought, what do you mean? And into the city when Jesus rode in on the donkey, that the donkey thought that everybody was happy to see him. And the next day Jesus moved on, and the donkey says, why aren't they treating me the way they did yesterday? So I want to make sure that I'm not the donkey, that I don't think that I'm special, that my role is to take my life experiences as a father, as an architect, as a builder, as a geometer, as a partner, as a son, and a martial artist, whatever, all of these different components, as a teacher, as a student, traveled to over 70 countries, learned a lot, lost a lot, remembered a lot. So I don't do anything that I haven't personally done myself or can attest to as a truth for me. So it's an invitation within which I can communicate. It's not lecture format. It has some dialogue and some exchange. So the man is absolutely saying, hold on a second, so you mean this? Aha, in my life. And I say, exactly. Da, 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 da. And
Is there,
I
is there a website for this?
nope.
No? How do you
Nope.
want people to reach out to you?
Initially, I was contacting the few men in my past and saying, this is what I'm up to. I know you.
But anyone watching now?
If you're watching now, I have an email. It's 13mentorus@gmail.com.
Okay, 13mentorus
Yeah,
at
one
gmail.com.
three, the number, numerical 13, mentorus, mentorus
Right.
at gmail.com. That's that. So if you do upload this, you can link that. Now,
I'll add it on screen right now.
no, that'd be wonderful. Yes, and I didn't want a website. I don't want an Instagram. It may make sense to have a Signal or a Telegram group for the men when they're all done, because I think that would be nice.
Is this correct?
That's correct. Well done.
Yeah.
So you've got Mentorus and us, like we said earlier, but you've also got men and Taurus, because the men, we need support to get back to the center, because everything is pulling us out to the extremities, which is a polarized view. We need to drop back into the center, the source, back to God, in effect. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. That was we covered a lot of territory.
Yes,
yeah.
And I'm really grateful to you. And when this is uploaded, just send me a link, and we'll throw it up on our website as well, and on our YouTube channel. And just our YouTube channel is a single word, Zemarc, Zemarc.
So the way it works, Michael, just so you're aware, is that whenever a video is duplicated across different channels, then YouTube throttles it. It's not interested in having that happen. So what you can do is that you can present that video and send them to my channel, and
that's absolutely fine. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
That's how it works. Yeah, so by all means, everyone watching, if this sounds something that you want to participate in, then reach out to Michael Rice here on this email. And for those of you who are interested in the next iteration of Reclaiming the Throne, you can just stay tuned to this channel, and there will be more information about that. But you can also find me on my Substack. So, very good.
Well, Ivan, thank you so much for this chance to chat, get to know you a little bit more, and to share the possibilities, on all levels. And absolutely. I wish you and your family every love, and get through your detox quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Same truth.
Now, thank you for watching this wide-ranging conversation. We covered so much territory, and a lot of it triggering to a lot of people. You may be one of them. And I wonder what you feel that you have watched and where you stand. Do you feel more aligned with Michael? Do you feel more aligned with me and the beliefs that we have? Or do you have another vantage point? It's interesting for me, the dilemma this whole conversation put me in, and I keep reflecting on, as I have moved back to Christ, if I should be focused entirely on people who also walk with Christ. And it just doesn't seem to be my way. And furthermore, and I may get hated for this, but I think that most of the world of Christians, of the church, is pretty deeply deceived, living inside of human traditions and not in a direct revelatory relationship with God. And this is what we're trying to reclaim in these days of collapse. Our intimacy with God matters more now than ever before.